Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Our first story is titled,
My husband used our son's college fund for his secret hobby. I exposed him. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Violet, and up until a few months ago, I thought I had a pretty good life. My husband Aaron and I had been married for 2 decades, weathering the usual ups and downs, but overall building what I believe to be a solid partnership. We have one son, Jason, who just turned 18 and is heading off to college in the fall, or at least that was the plan. From the day Jason was born, Aaron and I had been diligently saving for his education. We opened a 529 college savings plan and faithfully contributed to it every month, watching it grow over the years. It wasn't always easy. There were times we had to tighten our belts in other areas to keep up with the contributions, but we both agreed it was worth it to give our son a debt-free start to his adult life. By Jason's senior year of high school, we had managed to save just over $150,000. It was enough to cover 4 years at a good state school, or at least make a significant dent in the cost of a private university. I felt so proud every time I logged in to check the account balance. All those years of careful budgeting and saying no to expensive vacations or new cars had paid off. We were going to be able to give our son an incredible gift. Or so I thought. The first hint that something was amiss came about 3 months ago. Jason had just received his acceptance letter to his dream school, a prestigious private university known for its excellent engineering program. He was over the moon, but Aaron's reaction seemed oddly subdued. "That's great, son," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "But there are some excellent state schools that might be more practical." I brushed it off at the time, assuming Aaron was just having a hard time accepting that our little boy was all grown up and heading off to college. It wasn't until a few weeks later that the other shoe dropped. I was doing some spring cleaning, tackling the clutter in our home office. As I was sorting through a pile of papers on Aaron's desk, a bank statement caught my eye. It was for an account I didn't recognize, in Aaron's name only. Curiosity got the better of me, and I took a closer look. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were regular transfers from our joint account to this mystery account, always in round numbers. $500 here, $1,000 there. And then large withdrawals, often in the tens of thousands of dollars. My hand shaking, I turned on the computer and logged into our main bank account. The transaction history confirmed my worst fears. Money had been steadily disappearing from our savings over the past year. With a sense of dread, I checked Jason's college fund. The balance that should have read $150,000 now showed less than $20,000. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could this be happening? Where had all that money gone? And how could Aaron have done this without telling me? I confronted Aaron as soon as he got home from work that evening. I'll never forget the look on his face when I asked him point blank about the missing money, a mixture of guilt, defiance, and something else I couldn't quite place. "Aaron, what's going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Where is Jason's college money?" He sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. "I was hoping to have this sorted out before you found out," he said. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated," I snapped. "Now!" Aaron's shoulders slumped. "I've been investing in cryptocurrency," he admitted. "I thought I could grow Jason's college fund faster that way, but things haven't gone as planned." I stared at him in disbelief. "Cryptocurrency? You gambled away our son's future on internet money?" "It's not gambling," Aaron protested. "It's a legitimate investment strategy. I've been studying it for years. I thought I could beat the market." "And instead, you lost everything," I said, my voice flat. Aaron's face flushed. "Not everything," he argued. "I can make it back. I just need a little more time. The market's due for a rebound any day now. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man, who I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, had secretly drained our son's college fund to play amateur day trader with fake internet money, and he didn't even seem to grasp the magnitude of what he'd done. Aaron, do you realize what you've done? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Jason is supposed to start college in 3 months. How are we supposed to pay for it now? Aaron had the audacity to look annoyed. He can take out loans like everyone else, he said dismissively, or go to community college for a couple of years. It's not the end of the world. I saw red. Not the end of the world? You stole our son's future. You betrayed our trust and threw away years of hard work and sacrifice. And for what? So you could play at being a big shot investor? I was trying to provide for our family, Aaron shouted back. You don't understand. This could have set us up for life if it had worked out. But it didn't work out, did it? I retorted. And now Jason is the one who has to pay the price for your arrogance and stupidity. We argued for hours that night, going around in circles. Aaron alternated between defensive justifications of his actions and promises that he could fix everything if I just give him more time. But I'd had enough of his lies and excuses. The next morning, I called Jason at school and asked him to come home for the weekend. He knew something was wrong from the tone of my voice, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him over the phone. When Jason arrived home that Friday evening, Aaron and I sat him down in the living room. I'll never forget the look of confusion and growing dread on his face as we explained what had happened. I don't understand, Jason said, his voice small. The money's just gone? Aaron tried to put a positive spin on things. Not gone, son, just temporarily unavailable. I can make it back. You might have to delay school for a year or two. But a year or two? Jason interrupted, his eyes wide with disbelief. Dad, I'm supposed to start in the fall. All my friends are going. I've already accepted my spot. How could you do this? The hurt and betrayal in our son's eyes broke my heart. Aaron kept trying to explain his, quote, investment strategy, unquote, but Jason wasn't having any of it. You knew how much this meant to me, he said, his voice cracking. You knew how hard I worked to get into this school, and you threw it all away on what? Bitcoin? It's more complicated than that, Aaron started to say, but Jason cut him off. I don't care how complicated it is, he shouted. You stole my future. Both of you did. Jason, I swear I had no idea, I said, reaching for his hand, but he pulled away. How could you not know, he demanded. Didn't you check the accounts? The truth was, I had trusted Aaron to handle our finances. We had always made big decisions together, but the day-to-day money management had been his domain. I realize now what a massive mistake that had been. Jason stormed off to his room, slamming the door behind him. Aaron and I were left sitting in stunned silence. Well, that could have gone better, Aaron said finally. I turned to him incredulous. That's all you have to say? Our son's dreams just went up in smoke because of you, and you're worried about how the conversation went? Aaron's face hardened. I told you I can fix this. Just give me some time to get things in order. No, I cut him off. No more time, no more chances. You've done enough damage. I stood up, my mind made up. I'm calling your parents, I said, and mine. Everyone needs to know what you've done. Aaron's eyes widened in panic. Violet, wait, he pleaded. We don't need to involve the families. We can handle this ourselves. But I was done keeping his secrets. I picked up my phone and dialed my in-laws' number, ignoring Aaron's protests. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls and explanations. Aaron's parents were shocked and horrified. My parents were furious. Our siblings couldn't believe what they were hearing. "How could he do this to Jason?" my sister demanded. "To all of you. What was he thinking?" The truth was, I didn't know what Aaron had been thinking. I wasn't sure I knew him at all anymore. As word spread through our families, the reactions were unanimous. Aaron had betrayed not just me and Jason, but everyone who had supported us over the years. Aunts and uncles who had sent checks for the college fund at holidays. Grandparents who had set up small trusts to help with Jason's education. All of that generosity and goodwill squandered on Aaron's foolish gamble. Aaron was furious that I had aired our dirty laundry to the family, but I refused to feel guilty about it. He was the one who had made this mess. He didn't get to dictate how we dealt with the fallout. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. Jason barely spoke to either of us, spending most of his time shut in his room or out with friends. Aaron alternated between defensive anger and pitiful attempts to convince me he could still salvage the situation. "Just give me 3 months, he begged. "I can make it all back and then some. You'll see." But I was done giving Aaron chances. I contacted a lawyer and began the process of filing for divorce. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. 20 years of marriage is a lot to walk away from. But Aaron had broken my trust in a way I didn't think could ever be repaired. When I told Aaron I wanted a divorce, he acted shocked, as if he couldn't believe I would throw away our marriage over one mistake. "One mistake?" I echoed in disbelief. "Aaron, you systematically drained our son's college fund over the course of a year. You lied to me every single day. You destroyed our family's financial security and Jason's future. That's not one mistake. That's a calculated betrayal." Aaron tried every tactic he could think of to change my mind. He cried, he yelled, he promised to change. When none of that worked, he turned nasty, accusing me of never supporting his dreams and always holding him back. "I could have been rich by now if you hadn't always insisted on playing it safe," he spat. "I was trying to give us a better life." "No," I said quietly. "You were trying to make yourself feel important. You gambled with our son's future because you were too arrogant to admit you didn't know what you were doing. And now we're all paying the price." As news of our impending divorce spread, I was overwhelmed by the support I received from family and friends. My parents insisted that Jason come live with them while he figured out his college plans. My sister offered to help me find a good divorce lawyer. Even Aaron's brother reached out to say he was ashamed of what Aaron had done and that he supported my decision to leave. The divorce proceedings were ugly. Aaron fought me on every detail, from the division of assets to custody arrangements for Jason. Even though he was 18 and legally an adult, he tried to argue that his cryptocurrency investments were marital assets that should be split between us. Fortunately, the judge saw right through that nonsense. In the end, I was awarded a house and the majority of our remaining assets as compensation for Aaron's financial infidelity. It wasn't much. Aaron had burned through most of our savings on his crypto addiction, but it was something to start rebuilding with. The hardest part was watching Jason try to come to terms with the destruction of his college plans. He was angry, hurt, and confused. There were days he lashed out at both Aaron and me, blaming us for ruining his life. Other days he was quiet and withdrawn, his usual confidence shattered. I threw myself into trying to find alternative options for Jason's education. We looked into scholarships, grants, work-study programs, anything that might help make his dream school a possibility. Aaron was little help, still insisting that his next big crypto score could solve everything. It was Jason's guidance counselor who eventually helped us find a way forward. She connected us with an admissions officer at Jason's dream school who was sympathetic to our situation. While they couldn't offer a full scholarship, they were able to put together a financial aid package that, combined with some student loans, would make attendance possible. It wasn't the debt-free college experience we had planned for Jason, but it was a chance for him to still attend his top choice school. When I broke the news to him, I saw a glimmer of his old excitement return. "It's not ideal," I told him honestly. "You'll have some debt when you graduate, but I promise I'll do everything I can to help you manage it. We'll figure this out together." Jason hugged me tightly. "Thanks, Mom," he whispered. "I'm sorry I've been so awful lately. I know this isn't your fault." I held him close, my heart aching for all he'd been through. "You have nothing to apologize for," I assured him. "I'm so proud of how you're handling this. You're so much stronger than I was at your age." As Jason threw himself into preparing for college, I focused on rebuilding our lives. I went back to work full-time, taking on extra shifts to start replenishing our depleted savings. It wasn't easy juggling work, the divorce proceedings, and supporting Jason through his college preparations. But every step forward felt like a victory. Aaron, meanwhile, seemed to be spiraling. He moved into a small apartment and continued to pour what little money he had left into his crypto schemes. He missed several alimony payments, always with elaborate excuses about how he was just about to hit it big. I tried to maintain a civil relationship with Aaron for Jason's sake, but it was challenging. Every time I saw him, I was reminded of his betrayal and the damage he'd done to our family. It was hard to reconcile the man he'd become with a person I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. As the months passed, Aaron became increasingly erratic and unreliable. He would make grand promises to Jason about paying for his education, only to disappear for weeks at a time when it came time to actually contribute. His behavior put an enormous strain on Jason, who struggled to reconcile his love for his father with his anger over Aaron's actions. One day, about a year after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from Aaron's brother, who I'd always been on good terms with. "Violet, I need to talk to you about Aaron," he said, his voice grave. "He's not doing well." He explained that Aaron had shown up at his house the night before, clearly drunk and ranting about how he'd lost everything on a bad investment. He'd apparently taken out loans against his car and what was left of his 401k to buy into some new cryptocurrency that had turned out to be a scam. "He's hit rock bottom," he said. "He needs help, but he won't listen to anyone. I thought maybe if you talk to him." I sighed, feeling a complex mix of emotions: anger, pity, lingering affection, and bone-deep weariness. "I'm sorry," I said finally, "but I can't be the one to help him anymore. He's burned too many bridges." It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the right one for me and for Jason. We had spent the past year rebuilding our lives, and I couldn't risk letting Aaron's chaos back in. I told him I would pray for Aaron, but that was all I could offer. The next few years were a roller coaster of emotions and challenges. Jason threw himself into his studies at college, determined to make the most of the opportunity despite the financial strain. I worked long hours and pinched every penny, slowly rebuilding our savings and paying down the loans we'd had to take out. Aaron remained a peripheral figure in our lives, drifting in and out of contact. There were periods where he seemed to be getting his act together, finding steady work, attending AA meetings, making an effort to rebuild his relationship with Jason. But inevitably, he would fall back into his old patterns, chasing get-rich-quick schemes and disappearing for months at a time. It was hard on Jason, who struggled with feelings of abandonment and resentment towards his father. We spent many late nights on the phone, with me trying to comfort him and help him process his complicated emotions. As Jason progressed through college, I saw him mature and grow in ways that made my heart swell with pride. He worked part-time jobs, applied for every scholarship he could find, and maintained excellent grades despite the stress of our financial situation. He was determined to graduate with as little debt as possible, and his dedication was inspiring. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my own life. I went back to school part-time to finish the degree I put on hold when Jason was born. I made new friends, started dating again, though cautiously, and slowly began to heal from the trauma of Aaron's betrayal. It wasn't always easy. There were nights I lay awake, consumed by anxiety about money and Jason's future. There were days when the weight of single parenthood felt crushing, but with each challenge we overcame, I felt stronger and more capable. 4 years after that fateful day when I discovered Aaron's deception, I sat in the audience at Jason's college graduation. Against all odds, he had done it. He was graduating with honors with a job offer already lined up at a prestigious engineering firm. As I watched my son walk across the stage to receive his diploma, I felt a full sense of gratitude and accomplishment. We had weathered the storm, we had rebuilt from the ashes of Aaron's betrayal, and we had come out stronger on the other side. Aaron wasn't there that day. He had called Jason the night before with a rambling, half-coherent apology and excuse about why he couldn't make it. It was a familiar pattern by now, and while I could see the hurt in Jason's eyes, I also saw resignation and acceptance. As we celebrated at dinner that night, joined by my parents, my sister, and a few of Jason's closest friends, I looked around the table and felt overwhelmed by love and gratitude. This was our family now. Not perfect, not without scars, but strong and resilient. The road ahead was still long, and I knew there would be more challenges to face. Aaron's shadow would likely always linger in some form, a cautionary tale and a source of complicated emotions to both Jason and me. But I was no longer afraid of the future. We had proven that we could weather any storm, rebuild from any setback. Whatever came next, we would face it together, stronger and wiser for all we had been through. And as for Aaron, I hoped that someday he would find the help he needed and make peace with the choices that had led him to this point. But I no longer felt responsible for his journey. My focus was on the future, mine and Jason's, and the bright possibilities that lay ahead. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy us had instead become the source of our growth, resilience, and a deeper appreciation for what truly matters in life. It wasn't the future I had imagined all those years ago, but in many ways it was richer and more meaningful than I could have ever dreamed. Here are my thoughts about the story. Violet, this girl, our girl, this woman is an absolute beast, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like, imagine waking up one day and finding out your partner of 20 years just yeeted your kid's entire college fund into the crypto abyss. I'd be losing my mind. But Violet, she just strapped on her truckload of determination and got to work fixing the mess her dipstick husband left behind. And Aaron, oh man, Aaron, I gotta say, I started feeling off a tiny bit bad for the guy. We've all made dumb financial decisions, right? But the more I read, the more I wanted to reach through my screen and shake some sense into this dude. Like, bro, you lost your kid's college fund on crypto, and your big plan is to lose more money on crypto? Make it make sense. But you know who really got to me in the feels? Jason. Poor kid had his future snatched away faster than you can say Bitcoin crash. I can't even imagine how betrayed he must have felt. Your parents were supposed to have your back, you know? And then you have your dad keep making empty promises and bailing on you. That's rough, man, real rough. What really struck me about this story, though, was how it showed the ripple effects of one person's actions. Aaron didn't just screw over his immediate family. He let down his parents, his in-laws, all those relatives who had chipped in to help with Aaron's education. It's like he threw a grenade into the middle of his whole family network. And damn, the way he got so offended because of the truth sounds like some self-hatred, really. But here's the thing that I think makes this story so powerful. It's not just about the betrayal, it's about what comes after. It's about Violet and Jason picking up the pieces and building something new from the wreckage. And let me tell you, that part is inspiring as hell. I mean, look at Violet. She didn't just curl up in a ball and give up. Nah, she went back to work. She went back to school. She figured out how to get Jason to college anyway, setting a prime example for all the responsible parents looking for a role model. And Jason? Kid's a freaking rock star, working part-time, hustling for scholarships, keeping his grades up, all while dealing with the emotional fallout of his dad's betrayal. That's not easy, folks. That takes grit. I gotta say, the graduation scene at the end, that got me right in the feels. Just picturing Violet sitting there, watching her son graduate against all odds. Man, that's sweet. No jokes here, that's just sweet. But let's be real for a sec. This story isn't a fairy tale. Aaron's still out there, still messing up, still letting his kid down. And that's a hard truth that a lot of people have to deal with. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones who hurt us the worst. And sometimes, no matter how much we want them to change, they just don't.
And now, guys, we will move on to the second story of the video. Please like the video if you have enjoyed it so far. The story starts like this.
My in-laws secretly recorded our private conversations. I took legal action. I never imagined my in-laws would secretly record my private conversations in my own home. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment everything changed, the day I discovered their betrayal. It was a typical Tuesday evening. My husband, Brett, and I were unwinding after work, curled up on the couch watching TV. During a commercial break, Brett got up to grab a snack from the kitchen. As he reached for a bowl in the upper cabinet, he accidentally knocked over a small decorative vase on top of the fridge, a housewarming gift from his parents. The vase shattered on the floor, and as Brett bent to clean up the mess, something caught his eye amidst the broken ceramic shards. He called me over, his voice tight with confusion. I peered down to see a tiny black device, no bigger than a quarter, with a blinking red light. My stomach dropped as I realized what it was, a hidden microphone. Brett and I stared at each other in stunned silence for a moment before springing into action. We spent the next hour combing every inch of our house, discovering 5 more hidden recording devices. They were cleverly concealed, taped under the coffee table, wedged behind a picture frame, even tucked into a potted plant. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt violated and furious. Who would do this to us? Then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Brett's parents. They had given us that vase, along with several other decorative items around the house, as housewarming gifts when we first moved in 6 months ago. Brett's parents, Daniel and Diana, had never approved of our relationship. They'd never been quiet about it either. But this was a whole new level of betrayal. As I thought back, I realized there had been so many red flags, so many instances where Daniel and Diana had shown their disdain for me. From the very first time Brett introduced me to them, their contempt was palpable. I remember walking into their sprawling mansion, feeling immediately out of place in my simple sundress and sandals. Diana had looked me up and down, her nose wrinkling slightly as if she'd smelled something unpleasant. "Oh dear," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Didn't Brett tell you we dress for dinner? No matter, I'm sure we can find something suitable for you to borrow. That set the tone for our entire relationship. Every interaction was laced with backhanded compliments and thinly veiled insults. At family gatherings, Diana would loudly praise Brett's ex-girlfriends, all from wealthier families that they were familiar with, while pointedly ignoring me. Daniel would corner Brett, asking when he was going to come to his senses and find a better partner. There was the Christmas dinner where Diana, quote, accidentally, unquote, spilled red wine all over my white blouse, then spent the rest of the evening making snide comments about my unfortunate wardrobe malfunction, or the time Daniel cornered me at a family barbecue, grilling me about my finances and implying that I was only interested in Brett for his money. As our relationship progressed, their tactics became more underhanded. They'd invite us over for dinner, then spend the entire evening regaling us with stories of Brett's childhood, pointedly only addressing him and excluding me from the conversation. Or they'd plan elaborate family vacations, conveniently forgetting to invite me until the last minute when it was too late for me to get time off work. There was the time Diana had offered to take me shopping for my wedding dress, only to spend the entire day pushing me towards styles that were completely wrong for my body type and making comments about how some brides just didn't have the figure to pull off certain looks. I'd left the boutique feeling humiliated and insecure, questioning whether I was really good enough for Brett. Even on our wedding day, they couldn't resist trying to undermine our relationship. I'd overheard Diana in the church bathroom telling one of her friends how brave Brett was for settling and how she hoped he wouldn't regret his choice. Daniel had given a toast that was more about Brett's accomplishments and the family legacy than our actual marriage, barely acknowledging my existence. After the wedding, things had only gotten worse. There were the constant digs at my career. "Oh, teaching is such a noble profession," Diana would say, her tone making it clear she thought it was anything but. "It must be so rewarding to work with other people's children since you don't have any of your own yet." Daniel was even more direct. "You know, Miriam," he'd said once, swirling his brandy, "there's always a position available at the family company if you want to do something more substantial with your life. We could start you in the mail room, work your way up." I declined as politely as I could, explaining that I loved my job and found it incredibly fulfilling. The look of contempt on his face had been unmistakable. As I recounted all these incidents to Brett, his face grew more and more horrified. "I knew they were rude to you," he said, shaking his head, "but I had no idea it was this bad. Why didn't you tell me?" I sighed. "I didn't want to cause problems between you and your parents, and I guess part of me hoped that if I just kept being nice, kept trying, they'd eventually accept me." Brett pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have seen it. I should have stood up to them more." When I shared my suspicions about the recording devices with Brett, he was reluctant to believe it at first. "I know they can be judgmental sometimes, but they would never go this far," he insisted. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He didn't want to believe his parents were capable of such a massive invasion of privacy. But as we examined the devices more closely, the evidence was undeniable. They matched the decor items his parents had given us perfectly. "We need to confront them," I said firmly. "This is illegal and completely unacceptable." Brett nodded, his jaw set with determination. "You're right. Let's go over there now." The drive to his parents' sprawling suburban mansion felt interminable. My mind raced, imagining all the private moments they might have overheard, intimate conversations, arguments, even our love-making. The thought made me sick to my stomach. When we arrived, Diana answered the door with a plastic smile. Brett, Miriam, what a lovely surprise. Won't you come in for some tea? Cut the crap, Mom, Brett said, pushing past her in the house. We need to talk, now. Daniel emerged from his study, frowning at Brett's tone. Now, son, is that any way to speak to your mother? I pulled one of the recording devices from my pocket and held it up. Care to explain this? The color drained from Diana's face, while Daniel's eyes narrowed. I don't know what you're talking about, he said stiffly. Don't lie, Brett snapped. We found 6 of these hidden all over the house, in items you gave us as gifts. Diana's composure cracked. We had to, she wailed. We needed to protect our family. Protect your family from what? I demanded. From me? Daniel stepped forward, his chin raised defiantly. You have to understand, we were concerned. Brett's behavior has changed so much since he met you. We needed to make sure you weren't taking advantage of him somehow. I was speechless with rage. Brett, however, found his voice. Taking advantage? Are you insane? Miriam is my wife. The only ones taking advantage here are you two, violating our privacy like this. We did what we had to do, Daniel insisted. As parents, it's our job to look out for our son's best interests. My best interests? Brett's voice rose to a shout. How dare you claim this was for my benefit? You had no right to spy on us in our own home. Diana began to cry while Daniel's face hardened. Now see here, he began, but Brett cut him off. No, you see here, he snarled. What you've done is not only a massive betrayal of trust, it's also highly illegal. We could press charges for this. Daniel scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. We're your parents. You wouldn't dare take legal action against us. I stepped forward, my voice cold. Try us. With that, we turned and walked out, leaving Daniel and Diana sputtering behind us. In the car, Brett was shaking with a mixture of anger and shock. I can't believe they would do this, he kept saying. My own parents. I took his hand. I'm so sorry, babe. What do you want to do? He was quiet for a long moment before answering, I think we need to file a police report. They can't get away with this. I nodded, relieved he was on the same page. I agree, it won't be easy, but they need to face consequences for their actions. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We filed a police report and consulted with a lawyer about our options. To our shock, we discovered that in our state, it's a felony to record conversations without the consent of all parties involved. Daniel and Diana could be facing serious charges. Word of the situation spread quickly through Brett's family. The reactions were mixed. Some relatives were horrified by Daniel and Diana's actions and fully supported us. Others thought we were overreacting and tried to pressure us into dropping the matter for the sake of family harmony. Brett's sister Alexa was particularly vocal in her parents' defense. She showed up at our house unannounced one evening, practically foaming at the mouth. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? She shrieked. They were just trying to protect Brett. You should be thanking them for caring so much. I had to physically restrain Brett from shoving her out the door. Caring? You call secretly recording our private conversations caring? He yelled. They're your parents, Alexa shot back. Everything they do is out of love for you. That's not love, I interjected coldly. That's control, and it's illegal. Alexa turned her venomous glare on me. This is all your fault. That's enough, Brett roared. Get out of our house right now, or I'm calling the police. Alexa left in a huff, but the damage was done. The conflict was tearing Brett's family apart, and I could see how much it was weighing on him. There were nights I'd wake up to find him sitting at the kitchen table, head in his hands. As the case proceeded, Daniel and Diana's true colors really began to show. Rather than apologize or show any remorse, they doubled down on their actions. They hired an expensive lawyer and tried to paint themselves as concerned parents who were simply looking out for their son's well-being. Their lawyer argued that since they had given us the items containing the recording devices as gifts, they technically still belonged to Daniel and Diana. Therefore, they claimed it wasn't illegal for them to place recording devices in their own property. Fortunately, the judge didn't buy that argument for a second. She pointed out that once a gift is given, ownership transferred to the recipient. The fact that Daniel and Diana had secretly placed recording devices in items they knew would be in our private home showed clear intent to violate our privacy. The case dragged on for months. The stress took a toll on both Brett and me. There were times I worried the strain might break us, but ultimately it only made our bond stronger. We leaned on each other for support and presented a united front against Daniel and Diana's manipulations. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we had our day in court. I'll never forget sitting in that courtroom, my hand clutched tightly in Brett's as the judge delivered her ruling. The actions of the defendants represent a gross invasion of privacy and a violation of wiretapping laws, she stated firmly. Their claim of parental concern does not excuse their illegal behavior. I held my breath as she continued. She imposed a fine of $10,000 and ordered 200 hours of community service for each of them, declaring firmly that they had been in the wrong and would now pay for it. Relief washed over me. It wasn't the harshest punishment possible, but it was a clear message that Daniel and Diana's actions were unacceptable. The aftermath of the trial was difficult. Daniel and Diana's friends largely turned their backs on them, embarrassed by the scandal. Some family members still blamed us for tearing the family apart, but many more reached out to offer support and apologies for not believing us initially. Brett struggled with guilt and sadness over the estrangement from his parents. There were nights he'd look through old family photos, tears in his eyes. I did my best to support him, reminding him that he'd done the right thing by standing up to their toxic behavior. "You didn't choose this estrangement," I told him gently. "They did. Through their actions, you gave them a chance to apologize and make amends. They chose not to take it." Slowly but surely, we began to heal and move forward. We went to therapy, both individually and as a couple, to work through the trauma of the betrayal and its aftermath. We also took steps to ensure our privacy and security, installing a top-of-the-line home security system and being more cautious about who we allowed into our personal space. About a year after the trial, we received surprising news. Brett's cousin reached out to let us know that Daniel and Diana had started attending family therapy. According to her, they were finally beginning to recognize the harm they'd caused and wanted to work on changing their controlling behaviors. "They're not asking to see you or anything," she assured us. "They know they need to respect the restraining order, but I thought you might want to know they're trying to do better." Brett was quiet for a long time after that phone call. Finally, he turned to me with tears in his eyes. "I'm glad they're getting help," he said softly, "but I'm not ready to let them back into our lives. Maybe someday, but not now." I hugged him tightly. "That's completely valid. You don't owe them anything. We'll take it one day at a time." As the 2-year mark of the restraining order approached, Brett and I had many discussions about how to proceed. Ultimately, we decided to extend it for another year. We both felt we needed more time to heal and strengthen our own little family unit before considering any reconciliation. That decision was tested when we found out I was pregnant. Brett's sister Alexa reached out, begging us to let Daniel and Diana be involved in their grandchild's life. "They've changed," she insisted. "They realize now how wrong they were. Don't you think the baby deserves to know its grandparents?" It was tempting. The idea of our child never knowing Brett's parents was painful, but ultimately we stood firm. Our child deserves to be raised in a home free from manipulation and privacy violations, Brett told Alexa firmly. If mom and dad want a relationship with their grandchild someday, they'll need to prove they can respect boundaries first. As my due date approached, we focused on preparing for our new arrival. We converted the spare bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls a soft green and filling it with books and stuffed animals. Brett would spend hours sitting in the rocking chair, talking softly to my growing belly. "I promise you'll always be safe and loved," he'd whisper. "No one will ever violate your privacy or try to control you the way my parents did to us. You'll grow up knowing your boundaries are important and worthy of respect." Hearing him say those words, I knew we'd make the right choice in standing up to Daniel and Diana. We were breaking the cycle of toxic behavior, ensuring a healthier future for our child. The day our daughter Rachel was born was the happiest of our lives. As I held her in my arms, Brett beside me with tears of joy streaming down his face, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since before the whole ordeal began. "We did it," I whispered, gazing down at Rachel's perfect little face. "We protected our family." Brett leaned down to kiss my forehead. "We sure did, and we'll keep protecting her no matter what." As we settled into life as new parents, we remained firm in our boundaries with Brett's family. Alexa and a few others continued to pressure us about letting Daniel and Diana meet Rachel, but we stood our ground. We sent birth announcements and photos to the family members who had supported us, but Daniel and Diana were not included in that group. It wasn't always easy. There were times I caught Brett looking wistful when he saw other new parents with doting grandparents around, but he never wavered in his conviction that we were doing the right thing for our daughter. "I want Rachel to grow up knowing that her home is a safe space," he told me one night as we watched her sleep in her crib, "that her privacy and autonomy are sacred. If that means she doesn't have a relationship with my parents, then so be it. Her well-being comes first." I squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of love and pride. "You're an amazing father, you know that? Rachel is so lucky to have you." As Rachel grew from a newborn to a curious, babbling baby, our lives settled into a new normal. We were tired but blissfully happy, watching our daughter discover the world around her. We still attended therapy regularly, working through the lingering effects of Daniel and Diana's betrayal. It wasn't always easy, but we were committed to healing and growing stronger as a couple and as parents. About 6 months after Rachel was born, we received an email from Daniel and Diana. Our lawyer vetted it first to ensure it didn't violate the restraining order. It was a lengthy apology, acknowledging the harm they'd caused and the work they were doing in therapy to address their controlling behaviors. "We understand if you're not ready to let us back into your lives," the message concluded. "But we want you to know that we're committed to changing and respecting your boundaries, whatever they may be. We hope that someday we might have the chance to meet our granddaughter and show you the changes we've made." Brett and I spent a long time discussing that letter. We appreciated the apology, but we both agreed it was too soon to consider any kind of reconciliation. we decided not to respond for now, choosing instead to focus on our own little family. As Rachel's first birthday approached, we threw a small party with the friends and family members who had stood by us through everything. Watching her smash her cake, shrieking with laughter as frosting smeared across her chubby cheeks, I was filled with gratitude. Yes, the road to get here has been difficult. Standing up to Daniel and Diana, pursuing legal action, weathering the family drama, it had all been incredibly challenging. But looking at my husband and daughter, I knew without a doubt that it had been worth it. We had protected our privacy, our autonomy, and our right to live free from manipulation and control. In doing so, we created a safe, loving home for Rachel to grow up in, a home where she would learn that her boundaries matter, that she has the right to privacy, and that true love doesn't come with conditions or violations of trust. Here are my thoughts about this story. So let's talk about these in-laws from hell, shall we? Daniel and Diana. Man, these two are like the final bosses of toxic parents. I was sitting here, jaw on the floor, as I read about all the sneaky, underhanded crap they pulled. Like, who does that? Who goes into their son's house and plants freaking bugs everywhere? That's some unwelcome nonsense I wasn't expecting to see. And can we talk about how they tried to justify it? We were just protecting our family. Yeah, right. More like protecting their control over their son. It's like they saw their daughter-in-law as some kind of gold-digging alien who was going to harvest their precious boy's organs or something. I gotta say, though, I was cheering for Brett and Miriam the whole time. The moment Brett found that first bug in the broken vase, I was like, oh, snap. It's about to go down, and boy, did it ever. The confrontation scene at the parents' house, chef's kiss. I could practically feel the tension through my screen. But what's really important in this situation, though, the way Miriam and Brett stuck together through all of this. Like, that's relationship goals right there, folks. When Brett was wavering about pressing charges, and Miriam was there to remind him just why they needed to stand firm, I was nodding so hard I thought my head was gonna fall off. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but wait, they're still a family. Shouldn't they forgive and forget? And to say that, I say, heck no. Actions have consequences, people. Daniel and Diana messed up big time, and they needed to face the music. The fact that they got off with just a fine community service and a restraining order, that's already pretty lenient if you ask me. But you know what really got me in the feels? The ending. When Brett and Miriam had their baby girl, Rachel, and they're all committed to creating this safe, loving family for her, man, I'm not crying. You're crying. It just goes to show that sometimes the family you choose, or in this case, create, is way more important than the family you're born into. And that letter from Daniel and Diana at the end, part of me was like, too little too late, folks. But another part of me was glad to see they were at least trying to change. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't let them anywhere near my kid if I were Brett and Miriam, but maybe years down the line, if they really do change. Who knows? The thing that really stuck with me, though, was how this whole mess actually made Brett and Miriam's relationship stronger. They went through this insane ordeal, but they came out the other side even more united. It's like they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow.